afternoon. I'm Karen Gallagher, and I'm pleased to introduce Professor Amy Banzaert, Wellesley College's first professor of engineering. She earned the first doctorate in association with MIT's D-Lab, whose technologies and solutions are designed for sustainable international development for her research on combustion emissions of charcoal cooking fuel in developing countries. Her courses taught at Wellesley are based upon humanitarian projects that benefit local and international communities. These projects range from learning aids for preschoolers at the Wellesley Child Study Center to assistive technologies for growers with disabilities. With this hands-on pedagogy, she founded the Wellesley Engineering Lab, or WELab, a pedagogy I believe we will be experiencing in a short while. From my own academic and research experience, I have learned to value interdisciplinary teaching and collaboration. In particular, both Professor Banzaert and I appreciate the merits of a STEM education within a liberal arts context in order to better address global challenges. So I'd like us to welcome Professor Amy Banzaert.
Thanks, Karen, and thanks very much to the Albright Institute for having me. I'm really happy to be here. I want to acknowledge my colleagues who make this work possible. Professor Lynn Turbach from computer science and Professor Robbie Berg from physics are actually the creators of this project initially. It's changed a bit over the years, but they're the ones who started this work. And then Larry Knowles, who's in the Science Center machine shop, we couldn't pull this off without him. So I'm grateful to all of them. So today I'm going to make a case for why technology belongs in your liberal arts education as potential future leaders associated with the Albright Institute. Sometimes we think of technology in the liberal arts as orthogonal, right? Technology has no place in the liberal arts. The ancient Greeks who sort of came up with the idea of the liberal arts education felt that engineering was way too hands-on, way too applied to make sense in a liberal arts education. They also thought that women didn't really deserve a liberal arts education, and we pretty much disagree with that, so I'm saying we disagree with the engineering being excluded as well, particularly as today's age gets more and more technology-centered, right? Technology is playing a role in nearly everything imaginable. And as liberal arts students, if you don't have a conception of technology, if you're not able to communicate with the people creating the technology and or being the people who create some of that technology yourselves, you're going to be much less effective, powerful, able to do the work you need to do to create the change you want to create globally. So, with that said, I want to explain what is engineering, because we don't always know. We know what the word is, but the way I define it, and here at Wellesley we tend to define it, is engineering is science applied to serve society, right? So we learn about how the world works from science, and we figure out how to take that learning to make the world a better place using engineering. And when engineering doesn't have a service component, there's many people, myself included, who would argue it's not engineering, it's some other activity. But service is a key component of it. So to clarify how it's different, we can go back to the Latin, right? Good liberal arts scholars that we are. Science comes from scire, to know. Engineering comes from ingeniare, to create. So again, engineers apply that scientific knowledge to serve society. And why does it belong in your education? Well, downstairs in the science library and in the Clapp library is this text, Physics for Future Presidents, right? That you really need to understand fundamental physics in order to serve our country. Well, I would argue that there also needs to be science applied to serve society for soon-to-be secretaries of state, so that those of you who may become future secretaries of state in the best Albright tradition need to understand something about engineering or science applied to society. And to give you some context for how engineering plays a role everywhere, I want to go to the UN Sustainable Development Goals. They used to have the Millennium Development Goals, and there were 8, and I gave an example in all 8 goals of technology. Now they've bounced up to 17 goals. I can't spend enough time to do all 17. So I'm going to take the ones that I think might be the most surprising. Like, it's not that surprising that engineering has a role in sustainable cities, right, or clean water. You can think about that, but maybe you're not so sure how engineering has a role in ending poverty and preventing hunger. But then we can look at the treadle pump, which is an invention that's spread up throughout Africa, Southeast Asia. There's many different varieties of it, and it allows farmers to triple their crop yield very easily and affordably. And tripling your crop yield means three times as much food and 3 times as much income, which addresses both the poverty and the hunger issues. That's Jody Wu, who's a former student of mine, testing out a treadle pump in Tanzania. The Kinkajou projector can be used for night classes. So people who want education but can only learn at night and don't have access to electricity can use this solar power projector, and all of a sudden the idea of using a chalkboard in the dark makes sense. So to address the education question. In terms of gender equality, there's many tasks that women have to do every day in many parts of the world that prevent them from doing other aspects that could improve their education or improve livelihood. For example, spending 6 hours a day collecting water, maybe there's an easier way to do that. I actually put this up because I think the HIPAA roller is a very problematic technology, but it's an example of one that has there's possible solutions, even though they're not all great. And that's also something I want you to think about, is thinking really critically about these technologies, what works and what doesn't, and why. In terms of thinking about health and equality, the spacer on the left is a more or less a $50 spacer that my child has for asthma reasons. It allows the asthma medication to get to your lungs far more effectively. It's really incredible how much better it works. $50, not affordable if you're earning $2 a day. That paper one on the right was developed by Stanford students. It costs whatever it costs for the piece of paper and to do the origami, right? Minimal, a penny possibly. Does it work as well as the one on the left? Not quite. Does it work far better than nothing? Definitely. So reducing both inequality and improving health very simply. One of the leading causes of death for childbearing women in developing countries, in fact, the leading cause of death is postpartum hemorrhage. And this is, again, a very affordable, simple device that allows women's lives to be saved. Again, addressing equality and health. And then if you think about health, equality, education, infrastructure, economic growth, all of those can be very nicely tied to mobile phones, which have gone from about 58% of the world had access in 2001, more than 95% has access today, right? A tremendous growth, and that is driven by customer demand, right? That customers are demanding mobile phones, even in areas where they don't have access to the electricity to charge their phones. They're figuring out a way to make it work because a phone allows you to address all of these issues: economic, health, communication, so many powerful things. And that's a tremendous example of technology having a huge role. Technologies can also play a role in peace, justice, and strong institutions, whether promoting them or detracting from them. 3D printers can make prosthetics that are custom made for any person, phenomenally powerful. They can also make guns that are very difficult to track. And you think about, oh, well, technology, it's only high tech. Well, if you look at a hammer, right, a hammer could be a way to build houses, so people have access to houses, or a lethal weapon, right? And you think about technology getting more and more complicated. That's a Tesla, which is very close to a self-driving car, right? And there's a lot of people who are really excited about that prospect and a lot of people who are really terrified of that prospect. If you press the right buttons on that car, it played a little melody as like an Easter egg for Christmas this year. Really cool, but also if someone evil got a hold of that technology, they could be driving around those cars doing whatever they wanted remotely. It's mind-boggling. And the papers that I had you read for today, we're talking about the role of social media and software and big data in the election, right? And hacking, the list of questions of what's the role of software design, software engineering, and technology in terms of influencing all these things is significant. And we can think about whether people developing this technology are neutral service providers or actually need to think about the ethics, the implications of their work, and where does that line end? Should we not have hammers because they can be a lethal weapon? Probably not. Do some of these service providers need to think a little more carefully about the services they're providing? I would argue quite possibly. And it's both the role of engineers to be trained better and to be thinking about these, but also liberal arts students who are going to be working with those engineers to ensure they were doing it, right? If you have a liberal arts training, you're going to get a deeper training in ethics, in really thinking about these questions carefully, in philosophy, and you need to use that to work with engineers. And if you say, technology, I'm out, engineers, go do your thing, you're doing a disservice and going to be less powerful. So this is part of why I want you here today. The National Academies of Engineering created these worldwide grand challenges for the 21st century. The big ones they thought about were clean water, solar energy or sustainable energy, renewing our crumbling infrastructure, and avoiding nuclear terror. these are not solutions that only engineers can create, right? Like, it sort of does a disservice to say these are engineering grand challenges. These are humanitarian grand challenges that absolutely require engineers and absolutely require every other discipline I can think of to address them. And we all need to work together and communicate and be willing to work together. And the more that you are empowered as students who are likely not engineers, for most of you, to work with engineers, the better. And so that's why I'm here today. In case you get so inspired that you want to take an engineering class, if you haven't already, I want to let you know that there's a number of opportunities. Engineering 160 I teach this spring and has a few spaces open. 111 and 120 are in the fall, so for anyone who's not a senior, those are possibilities for you. And then likely next fall, I'll be teaching a class with Katia Confortini in social peace and justice studies, which I'm pretty excited about. So look for that, but it hasn't been approved yet, so I can't promise it. That's why it's in gray. Finally, if you want to go beyond Wellesley's classes, I offer advising. We have advising through career education and the Dean's Office with Allison Black as well. I offer research opportunities. There's the Wellesley Engineering Society, the student club about engineering, and we have a speaker series. So all of those are ways to get engaged beyond the classes. And if you want to go past that, we have cross-registration at both MIT and Olin, and certificate and double degree options for some of those for people who really want to go deep. So there's a lot of opportunities there. Okay, so this is your mini class on engineering design in 2 minutes. So you're going to need this for what's coming up, so keep it in mind. So the way that the engineering design process works is you identify a problem. You learn about the problem, learn about the people who are affected by the problem. You do some brainstorming and design to think about how you're going to address that problem. Then you create a prototype or a solution to that problem. You test it out. You evaluate what you find from your testing. You probably find out it doesn't work quite as well as you had hoped, and you iterate and you repeat until you finally say, good enough, I'm happy, and then you end. In reality, this process can go on forever. If you think about like the iPhone that started as an iPod, right, and is continuing to evolve every year, right? It never ends, truly, but you're always cycling about. The thing that's really important to remember here that I want you to remember today, fail fast to succeed sooner, right? The sooner that you start getting your hands dirty and building things, the sooner you'll figure out that this idea that makes sense in your head is hard to build or doesn't quite work. If you take a long time doing your design process without actually building, you'll be in less good shape. So start building early. And what are you going to build? Well, to give you that, I'm going to give you a 2-minute video to give you some context here. So,
the Zambezi River in Africa is used by elephants, crocodiles, and hippos, some of the continent's most dangerous animals. Fisherman Josfat and his brothers have found a safe, if slightly hair-raising fishing spot. A place where they can catch lunch without becoming dinner themselves.
The
place they're heading for may be safe from crocodiles, but it does have a drawback. The reason Josfat's fishing pools are far from safe is their precarious position. At the very top of Victoria Falls.
All right, so that seems like an engineering challenge to me. That if we could find a way to build a cantilever, which is just something that sticks out far, then Josaphat and his brothers and family could be at one end of the cantilever, and the fishing pole could be at the other, and they wouldn't have to be right on the edge of Victoria Falls, risking life and limb to avoid the crocodiles and rhinoceroses and what have you. So that's your challenge today, is to build a cantilever, and we'll explain more when we get down to the focus area of the Science Center, which is just downstairs, that main area where the leaky beaker is. So as you're doing that work, oh, I have to switch. As you're doing that work, I want you to think about a couple things. One is, are you simply a consumer of technology? Or can you also be a designer and an inventor, right? There's a concept called Constructionist Learning that at its core, engineering is about designing and building solutions to problem. And constructionist theories of learning show that people's richest learning experiences occur often when they're engaged in creating, designing, and making personally meaningful artifacts. So this cantilever for helping Josaphat may not be personally meaningful to you you probably are not fishing Victoria Falls these days. However, building this together as Albright students is a cool team building activity. Thinking about how different disciplines work together is really important, and you can make a really interesting device given the tools. In summary, thinking about all the different technologies that you face can be mystifying, right? But if you can start to work with them one-on-one and break down that fear, you're going to have more meaning with them and be able to better interact with them. So what we're going to do now is we're going to head down to the focus, take all your stuff, that's where we're going to meet, and let's go make. What you're going to be doing is making a cantilever. The goal is to make it as long as possible. The supplies that you have are 30 pencils and 3 sheets of foam, and you'll be working in teams of 5.
So we can do it something like this. And make the triangle. So how far do you want it to go out? I'd say longer. The longer and the better. More gradual. Yeah. It's like so bad.
Okay, other one needs movement.
Yeah.
What on? Okay.
So then this height, that's going to go to the yeah, we can do this again. We can make this at least the middle one a bit small, smaller. And then we could even put both of these at least a slight like gradation as well.
Sure, to take off some mass.
Yeah.